Old gardens had pests too, but they didn't reach for chemicals. Instead, they used smart, natural tricks passed down through generations. Some were clever, some were downright strange, but they worked, and many still do. Here are 20 forgotten pest control tricks Grandma swore by. Number 20. Boiling water. When ants built nests in the wrong places, such as between paving stones, at the edge of beds, or around fruit trees, Grandma didn't reach for commercial ant killer. She boiled water. Pouring a kettle of steaming water directly into the opening of an anthill or nest entrance was enough to collapse the tunnels and take out the colony at its source. It sounds harsh, but it was chemical-free, instant, and incredibly effective in small areas. Especially in tight garden cracks where bait wouldn't reach, this method was the go-to for keeping ants from spreading. It's not a cure-all, but when repeated a few times in a row, it knocked out even the busiest colonies without touching the rest of the garden. Number 19. Mole cricket rain gutter trap. Mole crickets are garden wreckers. They tunnel through the soil, severing roots and loosening seedlings before they can take hold. But Grandma didn't waste time with bait. She used design. By cutting old rain gutters into vertical sections and burying them a few inches into the soil, Grandma created slippery-sided pits. At the bottom of each one, she placed a small jar or tin. Mole crickets would hit the wall, slide down, and fall into the trap, unable to escape. No poison, no bait, just gravity and clever placement. These traps worked best in moist areas and near newly planted rows. They didn't catch every insect, but they slowed the destruction enough to give young plants a fighting chance. Number 18. Predator silhouettes. Birds might be charming, but in the garden they often mean trouble. Digging, scratching, stealing seeds, and pecking at the fruit. Instead of chasing them off with noise, Grandma used silence to their advantage. They cut out shapes of hawks, owls, or cats from wood or metal and painted them black. Mounted on poles above the garden, they looked like threats. Some even moved them around every few days to keep birds guessing. It was a quiet scarecrow, simple, passive, and reusable. Birds saw the danger and avoided the space. No traps, no nets, no noise, just a well-placed shadow that made the garden feel less safe, for the birds anyway. Number 17. Sacrificial Nasturtiums. Nasturtiums are more than just pretty faces in the garden. They've long been deployed as decoys. Grandma knew that certain pests couldn't resist them, especially aphids, cabbage worms, and flea beetles. Instead of spraying or squashing, she planted nasturtiums around their more vulnerable vegetables like kale, beans, or broccoli. The pests would flock to the nasturtiums, sparing the crops that actually mattered. Once the sacrificial plants were overrun, Grandma simply pulled them up and replaced them. It was a hands-off way to localize the damage, and as a bonus, nasturtium flowers and leaves are edible, adding a peppery bite to salads. Few flowers worked harder, offering beauty, function, and a quiet form of pest control that still holds up today. Number 16. Garlic and onion border planting. To Grandma, onions and garlic weren't just ingredients, they were garden guardians. These strong-scented crops were planted around beds like a natural fence. Their pungent aroma masked the scent of more delicate vegetables, confusing pests like carrot flies, aphids, and root maggots. The sulfur in their roots acted as a mild repellent, and their tall green stalks added structure to the garden. Some gardeners lined entire rows with garlic or tucked onions near crops like lettuce and tomatoes. This wasn't ornamental planting, it was strategic. Without lifting a finger, these plants silently protected their neighbors. It's a forgotten form of companion planting that made use of every inch of space while keeping the bad bugs guessing. Number 15. Ducks as natural pest patrol. Grandma didn't just walk through her rows, she waddled. Ducks, especially Indian runner breeds, were more than feathered companions. They were living, quacking pest control. Slugs, beetles, caterpillars, and even weed seedlings. gone. With a little training or fencing, ducks could patrol garden beds without touching the vegetables. Grandma would let them roam freely between planting seasons, while others guided them away from delicate crops. The ducks did their job with enthusiasm and laid eggs while they were at it. They didn't just clean up the pests, they added life and rhythm to the garden. No chemicals, no sprays, just beaks, curiosity, and a grandma's trust in nature to do its part. Number 14. Ash circles for cutworm control. Cutworms are sneaky. They hide in the soil and attack young seedlings at night, often snipping them clean at the base. But Grandma knew a trick: wood ash. After burning firewood or garden trimmings, she'd take the cool, dry ash and sprinkle it in a circle around each seedling. The fine, dusty texture acts like a barrier, dry, uncomfortable, and hard for soft-bodied pests to cross. Some people even mix the ash with crushed eggshells or sand for added grit. It doesn't harm the plant, and as a bonus, it adds a bit of potassium to the soil. Just make sure it doesn't touch the stem directly. Simple, free, and surprisingly effective for such a persistent pest. Number 13. Nesting boxes for beneficial birds and bats. Not all creatures in the garden are pests. Some are your best allies. Birds and bats, in particular, feast on insects that would otherwise devastate your crops. That's why Grandma, back in the day, built simple nesting boxes and mounted them along fences, trees, or shed walls. These homes attracted swallows, wrens, bluebirds, and bats, all of which made quick work of mosquitoes, moths, and beetles. It might seem counterintuitive, especially when some birds are pests themselves, but the trick was in balance. Scare away the bad ones, welcome the good. By inviting insect eaters to stay nearby, Grandma created a natural defense system that didn't require traps or sprays. It was a smart, silent partnership, one that made the whole ecosystem healthier. Number 12. Wind bottle whistles. When moles and voles started tunneling beneath the garden, tearing through roots and collapsing rows, Grandma had a curious solution: sound. She'd bury empty glass bottles upside down in the soil, leaving just the neck exposed above ground. When the wind blew over the opening, it created a soft, eerie whistling sound. It wasn't loud to human ears, but underground, the vibration and hum irritated burrowing pests. The noise made the soil feel unsafe, encouraging moles and voles to relocate. It was a pest deterrent powered by nothing but breeze and a clever understanding of nature's sensitivities. Number 11. Sticky grease bands. Before synthetic sprays, Grandma fought crawling pests with one sticky trick, literally. She made grease bands using strips of cloth, paper, or even burlap, smeared with a thick layer of sticky grease or petroleum jelly. These were wrapped around the trunks of fruit trees or the stems of large plants. The idea? Stop insects like ants, caterpillars, and climbing beetles from reaching the leaves or fruit. Crawlers would get stuck trying to pass the band, breaking their trail and protecting the plant. This trick was especially popular for apple trees, where winter moths would try to lay eggs up high. Reapplying the grease every few weeks kept the barrier strong. It was messy, sure, but it worked, and it didn't harm the tree or the harvest. Number 10. Buried potato. Wireworms are sneaky. They live underground, chewing through roots and tubers before you even know they're there. To stop them early, Grandma used one of the simplest bait traps imaginable: a raw potato. Sliced in half and buried a few inches deep, the potato acted like a magnet. Within days, wireworms would burrow in to feast. Grandma would then dig them up and toss the whole thing, including the worms, out of the garden. It didn't kill every pest instantly, but repeated weekly, it made a big difference. This method lets Grandma locate trouble zones before planting and reduce wireworm populations without disturbing the soil or harming other creatures. Just a potato and a little patience. Number 9. Tansy Plantings. Tansy isn't just a pretty flower. It was once planted intentionally in old garden plots for its bug-repelling properties. Its strong camphor-like scent is known to deter a wide range of pests, including beetles, moths, and even ants. Grandma would tuck tansy along borders or near crops like cucumbers, squash, and cabbage to create a natural wall of defense. Sometimes Grandma even dried the leaves and tucked them into pantry corners to ward off weevils. But it's a plant to manage carefully. Tansy spreads fast and can get aggressive if left unchecked. Still, in small patches, it works wonders as a natural insect repellent, offering beauty and protection all in one. No sprays, no chemicals, just an old plant with a powerful punch. Number 8. Dill, to attract beneficial insects. Not every bug is a pest, and Grandma knew how to attract the helpful ones. Dill wasn't just a kitchen herb. Its feathery leaves and umbrella-shaped blooms were magnets for beneficial insects. Lacewings, ladybugs, and parasitic wasps flocked to its flowers, and those bugs fed on aphids, caterpillars, and soft-bodied pests that threatened nearby crops. Grandma often planted dill close to tomatoes, peppers, and brassicas, not for flavor, but for natural defense. It reseeded easily, didn't take up much space, and brought balance to the garden without needing sprays or traps. When in bloom, dill turned the air into a battlefield where the good bugs won. It was a quiet solution, charming, effective, and deeply rooted in nature's own design. Number 7. Hot pepper spray. For generations, Grandma and others relied on the fiery punch of hot peppers to keep chewing insects at bay. This old trick calls for a simple homemade spray made by blending hot chili peppers, garlic, and a bit of dish soap with water. The result? A potent solution that irritates and deters pests like caterpillars, beetles, and even some leafhoppers. Sprayed directly onto the leaves, it coats the surface with a spicy layer that insects can't stand or chew through. It's important to test a small area first to make sure your plants don't react poorly and to reapply after rain. It doesn't kill pests outright, it just makes your plants too unappetizing to bother with. A perfect example of using nature's own defenses right from the pantry. Number 6. Stem wrapping for squash. Vine borers. Few pests frustrated Grandma more than the squash vine borer. One day, her zucchini looks fine, and the next, it's wilted and dying. That's because these borers hatch near the base of the plant and chew straight into the stem. Once inside, they're hard to stop. But Grandma had a trick: stem wrapping. They took strips of cloth, aluminum foil, or even pantyhose and gently wrapped the lower stems of their squash plants. This barrier confused the moths and kept them from laying eggs in the first place. Some added wood ash or diatomaceous earth around the base as extra insurance. It didn't cost much, but it saved the whole crop. Sometimes all it takes is a simple barrier to block a major disaster. Number 5. Handpicking Colorado potato beetles. Colorado potato beetles don't just nibble, they devastate. Both the striped adults and the orange, soft-bodied larvae can strip potato plants bare in a matter of days. But back then, Grandma didn't have chemical sprays. She had sharp eyes, steady hands, and a jar of soapy water. Early in the morning, when beetles moved slowly, she'd comb through the plants, flicking each pest into the jar one by one. She'd also check for clusters of yellow eggs hidden under the leaves and crush them before they hatched. This might sound tedious, but for small gardens, it was quick, effective, and totally free. Kids were often given the job, turning it into a kind of contest. Whoever caught the most beetles won. It was simple, but it worked. Number 4. Homemade soapy water for aphids. Aphids love to hide beneath leaves, draining the sap from young shoots and leaving behind sticky residue. Long before synthetic sprays, Grandma turned to a simple homemade remedy: soapy water. Just a few drops of natural soap or mild dish soap mixed into a spray bottle of water was all it took. When sprayed directly onto aphids, the solution broke down their waxy coating, dehydrating them on contact. It didn't harm the plant, and best of all, it didn't hurt bees or ladybugs. Grandma applied it in the early morning or late afternoon, avoiding the harsh midday sun. This was pest control at its most accessible, cheap, gentle, and surprisingly effective, especially for infestations on tender crops like lettuce, peas, or roses. Number 3. Marigolds for pest confusion and nematodes. Marigolds have long pulled double duty, adding color while protecting the soil. Their roots release compounds that repel harmful nematodes, tiny worms that wreak havoc underground. Above ground, the pungent scent of marigolds confuses flying pests like whiteflies and aphids, keeping them away from nearby vegetables. That's why Grandma often tucked marigolds between tomatoes, peppers, and beans, or planted entire borders with them. French marigolds were especially popular for this purpose, while African marigolds added big, bold color. These flowers didn't just sit there looking pretty. They worked over time. By placing them in the right spots, Grandma cut down on pests without ever reaching for a spray bottle. It's companion planting at its best, natural, beautiful, and time-tested. Number 2. Beer trap for slugs. Slugs can turn lush leaves into lace overnight, but Grandma had once again found a surprisingly simple trick: beer. All it took was a shallow dish or jar buried so the rim sat level with the soil. She filled it with beer and let the scent do the work. Slugs, drawn by the yeast, would slide in and drown without the need for any poison or fancy tool. Just a beverage that lured them to their end. These traps were placed in shady, damp spots where slugs like to hide. Old boards and mulch made good hiding places nearby. Grandma changed the beer every few days and emptied the traps in the morning. It was cheap, reliable, and surprisingly effective, even if the beer was flat. Number 1. Scented soap to repel deer. Deer might look gentle, but they're a garden's worst nightmare. They don't just nibble, they trample, yank, and devour entire rows overnight. For gardeners who couldn't afford fences, an old trick worked wonders: scented soap. Grandma would cut bars of strong-smelling soap into chunks, wrap them in breathable fabric, and hang them from branches or stakes all around the garden. The scent threw off the deer's sensitive noses, making the area seem unfamiliar or unsafe. Grandma even swore by certain laundry soaps or herbal bars for added potency. It wasn't fancy, but it made a real difference, especially when combined with movement or noise deterrents. The best part? One bar could last weeks. In a world without motion sensor sprinklers, this was low-tech brilliance. Back then, pest control was about working with nature, not against it. These old tricks still hold up. Which one surprised you most? Drop a comment and subscribe for more timeless tips from the garden.